Toyosi and her mother moved swiftly around the kitchen, the rich aroma of fried rice and sizzling chicken filling the air. Toyosi carefully measured the seasoning, ensuring every bite would be perfect for their guest. Tonight was important. Her father's coworker was coming over for dinner with his daughter. Her father had emphasized how much this dinner mattered, but Toyosi hadn't given it much thought. It was just another evening. The doorbell rang just as Toyosi's mother set the last dish on the table. Toyosi wiped her hands on a napkin and glanced at her father, who was already making his way to the door. She expected a formal greeting, polite smiles, and introductions. What she didn't expect was the name that left her father's guest's lips. "Toyosi, come and meet Mr. David and his daughter," her father said warmly. David, Toyosi's father's coworker, stepped inside, his expression friendly. Beside him stood a girl who looked just as surprised as Toyosi. "This is my daughter, Temilola," David introduced, placing a hand on her shoulder. "She attends Rosewood too." "You two must know each other." Toyosi stiffened. Her breath caught in her throat. Temilola. She hadn't expected her father's guest to be her, Temilola, of all people. The same girl who strutted around school like she owned it. The same girl whose clique controlled the social hierarchy. The same girl who made it painfully clear that Toyosi was beneath her notice. But Temilola looked just as stunned. Her usual confidence was gone, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. Without her usual entourage, she seemed almost different. Almost. Toyosi's father beamed, oblivious to the tension. "Wow, so you two do know each other. That's wonderful. I'm sure you're already good friends." Temilola blinked but quickly recovered, her familiar air of confidence returning. She smiled smoothly. "Oh, yes. We met on Toyosi's first day at Rosewood." Toyosi's lips parted slightly in disbelief, memories of their first encounter flashing through her mind, Temilola's cold smirk, the whispered name that carried weight in the hallways, and the way she had made Toyosi feel insignificant. But she quickly forced herself to nod. "Yeah, something like that." Her father clapped his hands together, pleased. "Good, good. You two should spend more time together. Friends are important, and I know Temilola comes from a good home." David chuckled, nodding in agreement. "That's true. It would be great for them to get along." Toyosi forced a polite smile and stepped aside, allowing them to pass. Her father, oblivious to the sudden shift in the air, continued his cheerful chatter, guiding their guests toward the dining table. As they sat down, Toyosi could barely swallow the growing unease in her chest. The table was set beautifully, plates of steaming fried rice, crispy chicken, chilled drinks, and perfectly arranged cutlery. It should have been a pleasant evening. Instead, the tension clung to the air like thick smoke. "So, Temilola, how's school going?" Toyosi's father asked, setting down his glass cup. "Oh, it's going well," Temilola replied smoothly, a small smile playing on her lips. Toyosi felt the words land like ice, her grip tightening around her fork. She kept her face neutral, but inside, her stomach twisted. She remembered how Temilola had looked down on her, how her presence had always made Toyosi feel small. But now, here they were, sitting across from each other at a dinner table, with the awkwardness hanging between them like an invisible thread. Toyosi's father chuckled, either not noticing or choosing to ignore the tension. "That's wonderful. It seems like you two have a lot in common." "Temilola comes from a fine family," Toyosi, and I think she can be a great influence on you. Toyosi blinked, a sinking feeling in her chest. The comment was meant to sound complimentary, but to Toyosi, it felt like an unspoken command to get along with Temilola, no matter what. The meal continued, but the tension only thickened. Temilola spoke with ease, answering every question with careful politeness. But Toyosi couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to change. She had always been the outsider, the one who had to navigate the complex social maze of school life. But now, in this first interaction, she was beginning to see the true power dynamics at play. Her father didn't just want her to get along with Temilola. He was pushing for it hard. The next day at school, Toyosi barely had time to process the awkward dinner before Temilola made her move. Toyosi, Temilola's voice rang out across the hallway as soon as she stepped inside. It wasn't a greeting, it was a summoning. Toyosi hesitated, but the weight of her father's words from the night before pressed against her mind. Friends are important, and I know Temilola comes from a good home. With a quiet sigh, she walked toward Temilola, who stood near her usual group. The moment she reached them, Temilola shoved a stack of books into her arms. "Carry this to my next class," she said smoothly, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Toyosi blinked. "What?" Temilola's eyes gleamed with something unreadable. "You heard me. We are friends now, aren't we?" The girls around her giggled knowingly. Toyosi clenched her jaw but nodded stiffly. She had no choice. If she refused, it would get back to her father, and she wasn't ready for that argument. It started small, carrying Temilola's books, saving her a seat at lunch, fetching her water from the cafeteria. But soon, it escalated. "Toyosi, rewrite my notes. Your handwriting is neater. Do my homework, please. You wouldn't want me to fail, would you? I need a favor. Tell Miss Titi we were studying in the library if she asks why I skipped class." Every demand came wrapped in a sweet smile, but there was no mistaking the power Temilola held. Toyosi knew this wasn't friendship, it was control. And worse, everyone around them saw it, but no one dared to speak up. One afternoon, as they lingered outside their classroom, Temilola leaned in close, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I need you to do something for me," she said. Toyosi sighed, already dreading what was next. "What is it?" Temilola's eyes flickered around the hallway before she spoke. "The final exam is coming up, and I can't afford to fail. I need you to get me the answer sheet." Toyosi froze. "What?" Temilola tilted her head, her tone light but firm. "You're smart. You can find a way. Maybe slip into the staff room, maybe ask one of those nerdy kids who help the teachers. I don't care how you do it, just get it." Toyosi felt her stomach twist. This was different. Carrying books and doing homework was one thing, but stealing. "I can't," she said firmly. Temilola's smile vanished. "Excuse me." "I said I can't," Toyosi repeated, her voice shaking but steady. "That's cheating. I won't do it." Temilola narrowed her eyes. "Are you forgetting who got you into this school?" Toyosi's breath hitched. "You didn't. My father helped your father, which means you're here because of us," Temilola said smoothly. "If you refuse, I can make things very difficult for you." A lump formed in Toyosi's throat. She was trapped, and Temilola knew it. Before Toyosi could respond, a voice cut through the tension. "She said she won't do it." Both girls turned. Amarachi stood a few steps away, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Temilola scoffed. "Mind your business, Igbo girl." "My business?" Amarachi took a step closer. This is my business. You've been using Toyosi like a servant, and now you want her to risk everything just so you can cheat. A few other students had gathered, drawn by the confrontation. Some of them had been forced to do Temilola's bidding before, and they looked ready to speak up. You're not as powerful as you think, Amarachi continued. People are tired of you. Temilola let out a sharp laugh. You think anyone here will listen to you? She didn't see the group of girls behind her, former friends, who had suffered under her rule. But Toyosi did. And suddenly, she realized she wasn't alone. I'll listen, a girl named Tosin said. Me too, added Simi. One by one, voices rose. She made me do her projects. She threatened me after I beat her on a test. She lied to teachers and blamed me for skipping class. The hallway buzzed with murmurs. A teacher, drawn by the noise, approached. What's going on here? Silence fell, but then Amarachi spoke. We have something to report. One by one, the students shared their experiences. Toyosi found her voice among them, speaking up for the first time. Temilola's face paled. They are lying, she snapped. But the teacher's sharp gaze landed on her. Enough. Temilola, come with me. We are taking this to the principal. Temilola turned to Toyosi, fury blazing in her eyes. You'll regret this. But for the first time, Toyosi wasn't afraid. As the teacher led Temilola away, Amarachi nudged Toyosi with a grin. That was long overdue. Toyosi let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Yeah, it really was. For the first time since she arrived at Rosewood, she felt free. Toyosi's heart pounded as she stepped into the house, her school bag feeling heavier than usual. The day had been long, exhausting, and nothing like she had expected. From being Temilola's reluctant minion to nearly being dragged into cheating on an exam, it had all spiraled into something she never saw coming. But now, Temilola was suspended, and the truth had finally come to light. She barely had time to take off her shoes before she heard her father's voice. Toyosi, come to the living room. She swallowed hard and walked in. Her father and mother sat on the couch, their expressions unreadable. Her father exhaled deeply. We received a call from your school today. Toyosi glanced at her mother, who gave her a small, reassuring nod. Her father continued. They told us everything. About Temilola. About what she did. About how she tried to use you. He shook his head in disappointment. She has been suspended. Toyosi let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. I didn't mean to keep things from you. I just didn't know how to tell you. Her father rubbed his temples. I thought Temilola came from a respectable home. I believed she would be a good friend for you. He sighed, looking away as if ashamed of his own words. But I see now that a person's character isn't determined by their tribe or where they come from. Good and bad people exist everywhere. Toyosi felt her chest tighten. Finally, he understood. She cleared her throat. Amarachi, she was the one who stood up for me. She saw what was happening, and she didn't hesitate to help me, even when it wasn't easy. Her father slowly looked up at her. Amarachi. Yes, Daddy. The same Amarachi you didn't want me to be friends with. Silence stretched between them. Then, he sighed again, this time with the weight of realization. I was wrong. Toyosi's eyes widened slightly. She had never heard those words from him before. I let my past experiences cloud my judgment, her father admitted. I judged Amarachi not for who she is, but for where she comes from. And yet, she was the one who showed true friendship. He looked at Toyosi with a solemn expression. I owe you an apology, my daughter. Toyosi blinked, feeling a lump form in her throat. It's okay, Daddy. He reached out, placing a firm but gentle hand on her shoulder. No, it's not. But I will do better. Her mother, who had been quiet all this time, smiled softly. What matters now is that we have all learned from this. Toyosi nodded. Today had been a whirlwind, but it had led to something she never thought possible, her father finally letting go of his prejudice. And that's how Toyosi's story ended.
On this journey and let your dreams steer. What your dreams steer.